let's talk about weird dead men. Although I'm also going to be talking about Elon Musk, and he's alive. So. As a 27-year-old woman who is currently childless, I think a lot about having children. I also think a lot about how and why people have children. Motives that are shaped by biology, society, culture, religion, and politics. I think about different kinds of families and think about what makes families happy, or not. I'm fascinated by family dynamics, because of course having children doesn't necessarily equal a family. I guess that's why I started reading the biographies of Elon Musk and then Brigham Young. And reading their biographies, specifically Walter Isaacson's Elon Musk and John G. Turner's Brigham Young Pioneer Prophet, I find myself empathizing with the subjects of the books, but in very different ways. Both men had hard childhoods. They were both intelligent. They clashed with the American government. But what separates them from other powerful men, at least for me, is their relationships with women and their children. Brigham Young embraced the doctrinal belief in polygamy, sometimes called plural marriage. Wikipedia numbers his wives at 56, 55 of whom Young was married to while simultaneously married to other women. He had sexual relationships with some, but not all of the women, resulting in 57 children. His biographer John Turner numbers it at 58. By 16 of his wives, and 46 of his children reached adulthood. This was an outlier even in a time before widely available birth control, and I found, while looking through old American magazines, many cartoons making fun of Young's hyperfertility. I know that's probably not the right word, but that's the word I'm going to go with. Hyperfertility. Basically, he had a lot of kids. He had the most, 10 kids, with Emmeline Free, his 21st wife. He had 3 children with wife number 43, Lucy Bigelow, who was age 16 at the time of their marriage. Young, in contrast, was 45. He had 2 children with his first wife, Miriam, who died tragically of consumption before Young was really involved in the church, let alone polygamy. And Young had 6 children with his second wife, Mary Ann Angle, but at first it was not a plural marriage, as Young was a widower at the time, but then it became a polygamous relationship in 1842, when Young married Lucy Ann Decker, who was technically his first polygamous wife. And I know it feels really dehumanizing to number the wives like that, and I apologize, because of course each wife is a whole and complete person with a complex life and feelings and everything, but numbering helps establish the timeline of the relationships, so that's why I'm referring to them by number. Elon Musk has never embraced polygamy, at least he's never publicly been married to more than one woman at any given time. But the Wall Street Journal reported in 2024 that Elon Musk wants a, quote, legion of children, and it's publicly known that he has 14 children, 13 of whom are living with 4 different women. His first wife, Justine, with whom he shares 5 children, his ex-girlfriend, Grimes, who had 3 of his children, Siobhan Sillis, whose relationship with him is hard to define, who has 4 of his children, and Ashley St. Clair, who had a child with him. However, Elizabeth Brunig, a fairly reputable journalist for The Atlantic, says that, quote, some believe Musk has more than 100 children. I understand why this claim would get backlash, because it's just that. It's a claim. It's very hard to know for certain how many kids Musk does or doesn't have. But I think, while acknowledging that it is just speculation, that there is some merit to the speculation. For one thing, the text with Elon Musk that baby mama Ashley St. Clair shared with the Wall Street Journal showed that, quote, during St. Clair's pregnancy, Musk suggested that they bring in other women to have even more of their children faster. Musk texted, quote, to reach legion level before the apocalypse, we will need to use surrogates. He has allegedly, and again I'm quoting here, recruited potential mothers on his social media platform X and, quote, used his wealth to buy the silence of some women who have his kids, according to St. Clair as well as other people, text messages and documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. There was also a 2024 article in Rolling Stone that claimed, quote, Musk continues to seek out women willing to have children with him, sometimes offering his semen to friends and acquaintances, such as, quote, Nicole Shanahan, Silicon Valley attorney and running mate of RFK Jr., and according to attendees at a dinner party thrown by a tech executive last year, Musk also said he could provide sperm to a married couple he had met socially only a handful of times, who had mentioned at the meal that they were having difficulty conceiving. So if Musk is just handing out a sperm, and I apologize for using that word because it's not great, but there's also not really a good synonym, so that's the word I'm going to use. So if he's just handing out a sperm to people he barely knows, it is plausible that his children number in the legion level, which could mean, again, allegedly, over 100. I think that Musk's fixation on having children is weird, but my visceral reaction is not as strong as other people's. I think because as someone who is Mormon or a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, I am very used to big families. It's not uncommon for people to have as many as 10 or 12 children in my religion, and Brigham Young, who was the leader of the church back in the day, had, again, well over 50 children. In Utah, where I currently live, having a lot of kids is generally seen as a good thing. But there are some important distinctions between how children were seen by Brigham Young and how Elon Musk sees children. And there are definitely similarities as well, particularly in their treatment of the mothers of their children. But I think both the differences and the similarities are important to discuss. Young's motivation for having that many children is complicated. Obviously, birth control was not available in the 1800s, which is when he was marrying all these women, but he also seemed genuinely to want a lot of kids. John G. Turner writes that Brigham Young believed that, quote, the chief end of humankind was eternal fellowship and familial glory, which meant that family units would undergo an ordinance called a sealing, which they believed linked family members together and then linked that family unit to their ancestors. Turner phrases it like this, quote, the Latter-day Saints under Brigham Young created earthly kingdoms, meaning their families, bound for eternity through plural marriages and ritual adoptions, with, quote, expanded family structures they expected to persist for eternity. In addition to these spiritual and religious motivations for having a lot of kids, Young also may have had more practical motivations for his hyperfertility. Speculation about these practical motivations are reflected in the 1940 movie Brigham Young, which never really talks openly about polygamy. It just kind of mentions it in passing. But there is a scene where two male characters are speculating that polygamy in Utah was meant to repopulate the church community, especially after all the deaths of the Mormons in Missouri and Illinois, which is a whole other topic for a different video.
Well, figure it out for yourself. Say every man's got 20 wives.
Aren't that many women?
Oh, we can get them. Women convert easy. And say every wife's got 10 children. That's 200 children apiece. And say every one of those 200's got 20 wives. That's 4,000. And say they got 10 children apiece. So that'll give you 40,000 grandchildren. Figuring 5,000 men to start with, well, that's 200 million. Quite a settlement.
Well, if arithmetic will do you any good, I'm willing to call you Grandpa right now.
I'm aiming to do my share.
Basically, the theory is that in order to rebuild the population that had been, threatened by these external factors, polygamy was the practical choice. And Brigham Young seemed to just really like adopting people as well. He was sealed, which, again, is like a Mormon spiritual ordinance meant to bind family members together, both couples and couples to their children. Brigham Young was sealed to quite a lot of people. Turner writes that on January 25th, 1846, Young adopted 8 couples and kissed all of his children after the ceremony, and some people wept for joy. Part of me thinks that the idea of being connected to family was potentially appealing to Young and other Mormon folks at the time, especially because at that time, in 1846, there were rumors that the governor of Illinois, Governor Ford, was going to declare martial law and attempt to kill or have a mob kill Young. A mob had previously killed Joseph Smith, Brigham Young's predecessor, in 1844, so the threat of death probably felt real. Plus, the Hans Mill massacre of 1838 hadn't happened all that long ago, so there probably were a lot of strong emotions about the fragility of life, and maybe people in the Mormon community were looking for a sense of certainty about family relationships continuing after death. In contrast, Musk's motivation for having children doesn't seem religious. It is very ideological, though. Elizabeth Brunig, the journalist for The Atlantic that I quoted earlier, says Musk is, quote, motivated by both his concerns about falling birth rates and gifting the world with his extremely smart offspring. And that, quote, Elon Musk has tweeted many times and spoken many times about his notion that birth rate declines mean the future of human civilization is in danger. The part that interests me is when Brunig says that, quote, another aspect of this is Elon Musk feels that his genes are especially good. He believes himself to be especially smart, and therefore I think feels a sense of duty or obligation to the rest of us fools to seed the world with his extremely smart offspring. I don't think Brigham Young would have echoed this exact vocabulary when articulating his motivations for having a lot of kids, especially because the concept of genetics wasn't really popularized until after his lifetime. So the concept of eugenics was sort of floating around, but not really in the way that I, as a 21st century person, think of eugenics. But there was definitely racism, of course, and we'll get to that in a second, but eugenics per se didn't really exist. Eugenics is the belief, according to Wikipedia, that people should, quote, improve the genetic quality of a human population. Historically, eugenicists have attempted to alter the frequency of various human phenotypes by inhibiting the fertility of those considered inferior or promoting that of those considered superior. So definitionally, Musk is engaging in sort of eugenicist practices. He allegedly wants his genes, which he views as superior, to be more present in the human population, so he has a lot of kids. Siobhan Zillis, who has 4 kids with Musk, told biographer Walter Isaacson that she had kids with Musk because, quote, he really wants smart people to have kids, so he encouraged me to. If the choice is between an anonymous donor or doing it with the person you admire most in the world, for me it was a pretty effing easy decision. She added, I can't possibly think of genes I would prefer more for my children. An article posted on the website Futurism claims that Musk has used an Austin eugenics startup called Orchid Health, which provides clients the opportunity to screen their embryos for genetic illnesses starting at around $22,500. While there are a handful of similar genetic prediction firms, Orchid stands out by claiming that it can sequence embryos' entire genome using as few as 5 cells and predict far more than its competitors. The quote keeps going. While it's not at all news that Musk, the father of at least 14 children by multiple women, is obsessed with reproduction, this claim, which expands on reporting from the information last year, casts the billionaire's pronatalism in a new and even more unsettling light. The quote keeps going. I apologize, this is a really long quote. One of Washington Post's Orchid insiders, who was not named to protect their privacy, told the newspaper that 30-year-old company founder Noor Siddiqui had provided Musk and Zillis with special screenings, which supposedly use bespoke algorithms to determine the embryo's potential for being intelligent. While the company insists it's not involved in eugenics, a word meaning good genes, it is very literally helping parents select good genes, and the alleged intelligent selection does sound a lot like the dictionary definition of the practice. End of quote. Of course, I want to acknowledge that while not a eugenicist, Brigham Young was very racist. He held very backwards views about Native Americans, Black Americans, as well as other races. John Turner writes in his biography that, quote, Young's belief about the place of Black people within the church was very racist, and he made clear that all Black people lived under a divine curse, and under Young's leadership, the church did not ordain Black men as elders, did not allow Black men or women to receive the endowment, and did not seal the marriages of its few Black members. Turner admits that the rationale behind this racism is unclear, but Young's, quote, revulsion over interracial procreation apparently played a major role in his thinking. Perhaps most fundamentally, a church that emphasized forging links between the generations and eternal sealings between its members would not find it easy to incorporate Black Americans within an ecclesial family. This means that if Black Americans were sealed and ordained within the church, that meant they were part of this ongoing eternal family, which Young obviously did not want. Young's views on Native Americans were also racist. Turner writes that Young adopted through his wife Clarissa Decker a young Native American woman named Capepoots, or Sally as Clarissa named her, and Sally, quote, remained a member of Brigham Young's household for nearly 3 decades. But Young, quote, later informed a visitor that it was difficult to rear Indian children because of cultural differences. In his dealing with Native Americans, Young was motivated by the prospect of possibly converting Native Americans to the church, which is obviously very complicated because there's a lot of paternalism and sense of superiority inherent in that motive. Turner writes that Young, quote, perceived only an awkward and inferior place for the Indians, both within his own family and in the kingdom of God, expanding its dominance over the Great Basin. This racism may have been exacerbated by accusations from outsiders that Mormons were not white. This came up when I was reading a dissertation by Scott DiMariano about race and marriage in Utah in the late 19th century. Mariano writes that, quote, polygamy prompted mid-century religious commentators to examine the facial characteristics of Mormons for signs of inherited deviancy. Their subjective study of a discernible Mormon race resulted in effective, though exaggerated, parallels between Mormon bodies and the appearances of other non-white, non-Christian nations where polygamy abounded. The quote continues. One anonymous writer in 1851, upon encountering 2 Mormons on horseback, felt that their immorality was discernible through their physiognomy and appearance. An assistant U.S. Army surgeon, Robert Bartholow, in an 1858 report on the U.S. military in the West, remarked on the, quote, deplorable effects of polygamy upon the Mormon countenance, The unique Mormon expression consisted of, quote, a yellow, sunken, cadaverous visage, the greenish-colored eyes, the thick, protuberant lips, the low forehead, the light yellowish hair, and the lank, angular person. Bartholomew refused to characterize Mormons using familiar racial taxonomies, but instead classified Mormons as a new race, destined for extinction because of their physical degeneracy, a direct consequence of their moral depravity. Bartholomew's argument about the moral depravity and inevitable extinction of the Mormon race approximated arguments about the eventual decline of the African race circulating at the time. These accusations of non-whiteness, however, didn't make Brigham Young more sympathetic to non-white people. If anything, it made him double down on his own racism. But despite this very blatant racism, I don't think Young was a eugenicist, not only because the genetic sciences did not exist when he was alive, but also because he didn't seem to be very choosy about the women he had kids with. Turner writes that in the 1840s, Young had not been overly selective about his wives, asserting that women had the right to choose their husbands. Young slowed down later and only married 5 women between 1852 and 1856, but his feelings seemed to be that men shouldn't be too picky about their wives and therefore the people they had kids with. Turner writes that Brigham Young, quote, chastised men seeking divorces from women, saying, quote, that when a man married a wife, he took her for better or for worse, and had no right to ill-use her, and if she shit in bed and laid in it until noon, he must bear it. This attitude does seem different from Musk's, who does seem to be offering his sperm to people he barely knows, but these people all seem to be wealthy, educated, and or intelligent. Of course, you should come to your own conclusions about whether Young was or was not a eugenicist. I think he was racist, but not a eugenicist, while I think Musk is a eugenicist, but not racist. But I understand that those categories definitely overlap, and it's very complicated. It's interesting that both Musk and Brigham Young have had the women around them called a harem. I think harem is an interesting word because it feels out of place in America. So it's like using that term is meant to make both Musk's lifestyle and Young's lifestyle feel very weird or bizarre. And there is also an Eastern connotation to the term. Mariano, who I quoted earlier, claims that, quote, with a seemingly depraved marriage system to go with overt theocratic intentions in Utah Territory, Great Basin Mormons are viewed as threats to the very fabric of the American Republic. And, quote, with the Mormon home in moral disrepair, anti-Mormons distrusted Mormon political participation because, quote, Mormonism worked against a constructed and often contested national identity that relied on notions of citizenship and marriage for meaning and power. Mormonism challenged American imaginations and their own collective self as a Protestant bastion of Republican virtue and self-rule. I think Musk is also viewed as an outsider in America, in part because he's an immigrant from South Africa, in part because he's obviously on the spectrum, and also because he has a weird family, both his children and his parents. And while I think it's important to acknowledge that the judgment about Young's family situation and Musk's family situation can be a little self-righteous, part of it is valid, at least in my opinion, especially when critics point out that men having kids with many different women signals a devaluing of any individual woman. In other words, I would not call Musk or Young a feminist. They are/were dismissive of women with whom they had children. According to Grimes, who had 3 children with Musk, she, quote, spent a year locked in battle in a state with terrible mother's rights, having my Instagram posts and modeling used as reasons I shouldn't have my kids, and fighting and detaching from the love of my life as he becomes unrecognizable to me, with a fraction of his resources or IQ/strategy experience, all the while I didn't see one of my babies for 5 months. This claim that Musk is disregarding her rights to their children is supported by their oldest child's appearance at several public events, which Grimes has criticized, apparently to no end. Brigham Young could also be very dismissive of the mothers of his children. When, in 1863, Young was sealed or married to Amelia Folsom, the handsome and magnetic daughter of church-employed architect William Folsom, she, Amelia, was 24 years of age, 37 years younger than her husband. Turner writes that this, quote, sealing angered at least one of Young's other wives who penned him a caustic Valentine's Day greeting, criticizing Brigham Young for appearing at the New Salt Lake Theater with his new wife. It's possible that this caustic Valentine was written by Emmeline Free, then 36 years of age. Until Young's marriage to Amelia, Emmeline was regarded by many observers as her husband's favorite, and several later accounts describe her as deeply wounded by Young's marriage to Amelia. At the same time, several of Young's other wives who had resented Emmeline's privileged position were quietly delighted at her displacement. Turner writes that Emmeline had just recently lost her 9th child, a son either stillborn or who died later the same day. I can only imagine how painful it would be to hear about the father of your dead child being at the theater in public with his beautiful new wife while you were still recovering emotionally and physically from childbirth. Emmeline was not alone in accusing Brigham Young of callousness towards her. Anne Eliza Webb Young, who divorced Brigham Young in 1875 when she was 30 years old and Young was 73, claimed that Young, quote, visited her very seldom at the farm where she lived, never remained over half an hour, and that she was required to do menial work on the farm with no financial support from her husband. Turner writes that, quote, depending on his own financial circumstances and his whims, Young could be either miserly or generous. I think that when someone is involved with so many romantic partners, even if in a best-case scenario they want to provide attention and economic support to every person equally, it's difficult to do so. If, however, someone is callous and unwilling to provide attention and economic support to their partners, it's just a recipe for favoritism and disaster. But Young could be considerate of women as well as inconsiderate. Partially to stave off accusations that Utah needed to be under federal control, Young was involved when, in February 1870, Mormon legislators made Utah the second territory in the nation after Wyoming in which women could vote. And Young's views on women were also sometimes contradictory. He often, quote, reminded women that they were subject to their husbands, but he also said women should study law or physic or become good bookkeepers, and several of Young's wives gained official positions of high ecclesiastical status and influence. Turner writes that, quote, over the 30 years of his church presidency, Young said so many different things about women that with selective quotations from his discourses, one can turn him into either a misogynist or a proto-feminist. Neither portrait is accurate. As for Musk, his views on women appear to be slightly more straightforward. In a Marie Claire article reflecting on her marriage to Musk, Justine Wilson, his first wife, wrote that, quote, as we danced at our wedding reception, Elon told me I am the alpha in this relationship. Justine, quote, shrugged it off, just as I would later shrug off signing the postnuptial agreement, but as time went on, I learned that he was serious. He had grown up in the male-dominated culture of South Africa, and the will to compete and dominate that made him so successful in business did not magically shut off when he came home. She continued, this and the vast economic imbalance between us meant that in the months following our wedding, a certain dynamic began to take hold. Elon's judgment overruled mine, and he was constantly remarking on the way he found me lacking. I am your wife, I told him repeatedly, not your employee. But Musk also clearly has an ability to attract very talented, successful women. Justine Wilson, a successful novelist, Tallulah Riley, an accomplished actress, Grimes, a famous musician and producer, and Siobhan Zillis, mother of 4 of his children, is an executive at his company Neuralink. It's possible, of course, for a man to attract successful women and be a misogynist, but I think Musk is an interesting case. A Reddit post allegedly made by Grimes under a pseudonym, though of course there's no way to prove that the original poster was Grimes, claims that the poster's boyfriend, assumed to be Musk, initially appeared supportive of his girlfriend's independence and only later in the relationship began to resent her and repeat right-wing/red pill talking points. Again, there is no way to know if that post was about their relationship, but it kind of reflects their relationship in some ways: initial infatuation, rapid commitment, slow and painful disillusionment as each realizes that the other is not the person whom they thought they were. This video is also super long, so I'm not going to get into Young and Musk's relationships with each of their individual children. Suffice it to say, with both men, it's complicated, and some relationships were/are good, while others are not, for a variety of reasons. I think it's worth noting, though, that Vivian Wilson, Musk's trans daughter, has cut all ties with Elon and posted via threads that she learned about the birth of 2 of her half-siblings via social media rather than through family. Of course, if Brigham Young's children had had social media, maybe they would have been posting something similar. We'll never know. Brigham Young definitely clashed with some of his children at different points, and his youngest was 7 years old, born in 1870 to Mary Van Cott, when Young died, so it's safe to say some of Young's children never knew him particularly well. I personally think big families are fascinating because, as someone who's terrified of being alone, the allure of all those children or dozens of siblings is the idea that you'll never be alone. There will always be someone around with whom you share something, even if it's just the same biological father. However, I think that there's a difference between big families that live in the same space and share parents, versus families that don't live in the same space and share only one parent. In the latter situation, maybe the knowledge that you're supposed to be connected to someone, but you don't really share life experiences with them, just makes you feel lonelier. I think a parent should strive for their children to feel loved and respected and valued, so the risk of a big family where a child may feel overshadowed or overlooked is very real, and I think that risk would have to be approached really thoughtfully. I'm not convinced that some people who have large families are as thoughtful about it as they should be, but I think other people who have large families do approach the decision to have kids very thoughtfully and do make every effort to provide each child with attention and love. So it's possible to have a very large, happy family, but I also think it's very, very complicated. I wonder if, in the case of Young and Musk, either man was motivated more by emotion than they were by logic. I get that Young wanted a lot of kids for practical and religious reasons, and Musk also has a certain ideology supporting his hyperfertility, but I wonder if either wants kids as sort of emotional buffers, like living proof that the forces that tried to destroy them had failed. Because sometimes having children is just the result of intercourse, but sometimes it also has deep emotional significance, proof that a person is financially and emotionally stable enough to support offspring. If this is the case, are children then evidence of their parents' progress, rather than complex individuals in their own right? Understanding why and how you were brought into this world is really complicated. I use religion to interpret my purpose in life, but I know other people use other things. But I think most people want to believe that they were not conceived or born accidentally, but deliberately, which Young and Musk technically fulfill. Their children were/are part of a larger ideology. But I think children also want to be their own person and individually interpret their role in life and God's purpose for them on this earth. And having a parent's overwhelming mission statement, like Young's vision for Utah or Musk's ambition to get to Mars, hanging over you as their child would be really, really hard. These emotional dynamics are unfortunately impossible to really know in either Musk's or Young's case because outside of the sources I've quoted, I have no special insight into their familial relationships. All I can do is guess. But as icons, both Musk and Young have been talked about a lot. There are so many books, documentaries, and articles written about each of them. People are really fascinated by the lives of these men, mostly for their significant social and technological achievements. And justifiably, Young was instrumental in colonizing Utah and supporting the fledgling Mormon/Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Musk has kept various companies afloat, which have gone on to devise interesting new technologies, and he's contributed arguably more than any other single individual to the revivification of the space industry. But as just a random woman reading about these men, I can't help but think about it from a woman's perspective. I think that family is the most important legacy any of us will leave because family is a reflection of our intimate character, our true personalities. And while I think prurient fixation on these men's sex lives is not helpful, I don't think it's unreasonable to wonder how their families functioned, and if their attempts to redefine social norms and create new family structures is something that should be copied or avoided. And in an age of rampant individuality, at least in 21st century America, which has definitely benefited me in a lot of ways, I do also worry that Americans undervalue family. Given how isolated social media and technology can make us feel, opportunities for connection are more important than ever. But I'm not convinced that just having a lot of kids automatically creates those connections. Like I said, it's complicated, and I wish I knew more so I could evaluate for myself Musk's and Young's personal motivations. But I guess I'll have to leave it with you, viewer/listener. Why do you think someone would choose to have 50 children, or in Musk's case, allegedly over 100? Is it ever justified for a parent to stretch their attention that thin? Or does love just expand to meet the demands? Is family our truest legacy, and if so, then is having more family automatically better? What does the love of a father mean to a child with 40 other siblings? Maybe nothing, but maybe everything.